The silver tray trembled in Thomas Morgan's hands. Not from fear, not yet, but from the weight of 30 years of service. 30 years of delivering meals to kings and queens. 30 years of silence and loyalty. But tonight, as moonlight cut through the palace kitchen windows, everything felt wrong. Thomas was a senior guard at Buckingham Palace, a man who had seen 3 monarchs and countless scandals. His gray hair and lined face told stories he would never speak aloud. Tonight, he had volunteered for kitchen duty. The regular staff had called in sick, 3 of them all at once. Strange, but not unheard of during flu season. He lifted the silver dome covering the king's dinner. Steam rose from the roasted pheasant, carrying the rich scent of herbs and wine. But beneath that aroma, something else lingered. Something bitter. Something wrong. Thomas had served enough royal meals to know what they should smell like. This wasn't right. His fingers brushed the edge of the porcelain plate. Still warm. The meal had been prepared exactly 17 minutes ago, according to the kitchen log. He glanced at the handwriting. Not Chef Henry's usual script. The letters were too sharp, too perfect, almost feminine. Before you find out what Thomas discovered next, hit that subscribe button. This story gets darker than anyone expected, and you won't want to miss what happens. Thomas set down the tray and looked around the empty kitchen. The silence pressed against his ears. Where was everyone? Even during late hours, someone was always nearby, a sous chef, a cleaning attendant, someone. But tonight the palace felt like a tomb. He picked up the sauceboat beside the pheasant. The reduction should have been deep brown, almost black. This one had a greenish tint. Subtle. Most people would miss it. Thomas brought it closer to his nose and immediately pulled back. His stomach turned almonds. Not the sweet smell of marzipan or dessert. This was sharp chemical. His mind raced back to his military training decades ago. Cyanide, the smell of bitter almonds. His hands started shaking now. For real, someone had poisoned the king's meal. Thomas stepped back from the counter, his heart hammering. His first instinct was to call security. But who could he trust? Someone had access to this kitchen. Someone with enough power to clear out the staff. Someone who knew the king's evening routine. He thought of the queen consort, Camilla. She had been in the private dining room earlier. He'd seen her. They'd exchanged pleasantries. She'd smiled at him, that practiced royal smile. But there had been something in her eyes. Something cold, no, that was impossible. Wasn't it? Thomas pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. But before he could dial, he heard footsteps. Heels clicking on marble. Coming closer, fast. He shoved the phone back in his pocket and grabbed a kitchen towel, pretending to clean the counter. The doors swung open. Camilla stood there. She wasn't dressed for dinner. She wore a dark coat buttoned to her throat despite the warm palace air. Her hair, usually perfect, had a strand loose. Her lipstick was slightly smudged at one corner. She looked at Thomas. Then at the tray? Still preparing the meal? Her voice was smooth, but her eyes weren't smiling. Just finishing, Your Majesty, Thomas said. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Camilla walked closer. Each footstep echoed. She reached toward the tray, her fingers hovering over the silver dome. The king is very hungry tonight, she said softly. We shouldn't keep him waiting. Thomas's blood ran cold. He knew, in that moment, that he was standing across from someone capable of murder. And she knew that he knew. Asterisk, the kitchen felt smaller suddenly. Camilla's presence filled every corner. Thomas forced himself to breathe normally. To act like he hadn't just discovered treason, like his world hadn't tilted sideways. Of course, Your Majesty, he said, reaching for the tray. I'll deliver it immediately. Wait, her hand shot out. Not touching him, but close enough. Let me see it first. Thomas's mind raced. If he refused, she would know. If he showed her, she might insist on watching him deliver it. Either way, the king was in danger. He lifted the dome slowly. The pheasant sat there, golden and perfect. To anyone else, it would look delicious. Camilla leaned in, studying it. Her face showed nothing. No guilt. No fear. Just a queen examining her husband's dinner. It looks cold, she said. It's still quite warm, Your Majesty. Chef prepared it exactly, I said. It looks cold. Her voice cut like glass. Reheat it. The king deserves a hot meal. Thomas understood immediately. She wanted him to add more heat to break down any evidence, to make the poison mix more thoroughly. Or perhaps she wanted time to stop him from warning anyone, as you wish. He placed the dome back and lifted the tray. But instead of moving toward the ovens, he took a step toward the main doors. Where are you going? Camilla's voice sharpened. To inform Chef Henry about the temperature issue. Chef Henry left an hour ago. Family emergency. She moved between Thomas and the door. Her smile never wavered. I dismissed him myself. You'll have to manage. Lie. Thomas had seen Henry's car in the staff parking area 20 minutes ago, but he nodded. Played along. Moved toward the commercial ovens lining the wall. His hands worked automatically, sliding the plate into the warmer. But his mind was spinning. He needed help. He needed to warn someone. The king's private secretary, perhaps, or the head of palace security. But Camilla stood 3 feet away, watching his every move. You've been here a long time, Thomas, she said conversationally. 30 years, isn't it? 31, Your Majesty. You must have seen many things. Heard many things. She examined her nails. Palace walls have ears, they say. Wasn't a question. It was a threat. I've always believed discretion is the highest form of service, Thomas replied carefully. Indeed. Camilla walked closer to the oven, peering through the glass window. And loyal servants are rewarded. Your retirement fund, for instance. Very generous. It would be a shame if complications arose. Thomas's jaw tightened. She was offering him a choice. Look away, stay silent and keep his pension. Or interfere and lose everything. Maybe more than everything. The oven timer dinged. He removed the plate with oven mitts, set it back on the tray. The sauce now bubbled slightly. The greenish tint was less obvious, but the smell, that terrible almond smell, still lingered if you knew to look for it. Perfect, Camilla said. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small vial. The king also requested his vitamins be delivered with dinner. Would you add this to his water glass? She held out the vial. Clear liquid inside. Thomas stared at it. This was his moment. Take it and become part of a murder. Refuse and what? She couldn't kill him here. Could she? His hand trembled as he reached out. But instead of taking the vial, he knocked it. Not hard, just enough. It slipped from Camilla's fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Clear liquid spread across white stone. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. Thomas dropped to his knees immediately, pulling out his towel. How clumsy of me. I'll leave it. Her voice was ice. Pure ice. She stared down at the broken glass, at the spilled liquid now soaking into his towel. Her mask had slipped. Just for a second. And in that second, Thomas saw rage, calculation, and fear. Someone cleared their throat. They both turned. A young woman stood in the doorway. Sarah Chen, one of the junior assistants. She held a tablet and wore a confused expression. Pardon me, Your Majesty. The king sent me. He's wondering about dinner. It's been almost 30 minutes. Camilla's face transformed instantly. The rage vanished. The warm queen returned. Of course, Thomas was just ensuring everything was perfect. He takes such care. Sarah smiled politely, but her eyes moved to the broken glass. 2. Thomas on his knees. To the unusual scene before her. I can deliver the tray, Sarah offered. If Thomas needs to clean up, no. Camilla's word was final. Thomas will deliver it. Personally? Won't you, Thomas? Thomas stood slowly. His knees cracked. His heart pounded. Sarah still waited in the doorway, her presence a thin shield between him and Camilla's cold rage. But that shield wouldn't last. Of course, Your Majesty, he said. Right away, he lifted the tray. The silver felt impossibly heavy. Each step toward the door was a step toward disaster. If he delivered this meal, the king would die. If he refused, what then? Camilla had made her power clear. She had dismissed staff. She had cleared the kitchen. She had planned this perfectly, except for the broken vial. Except for Sarah's arrival, Thomas walked past Camilla. She smelled of expensive perfume and something else. Desperation, maybe, or determination. As he passed, she leaned close and whispered, so softly Sarah couldn't hear. "Your daughter Emily starts university next month? Cambridge, isn't it?" Such an expensive school, Thomas froze. His daughter. She was threatening his daughter. His hands gripped the tray so hard his knuckles went white. "I would hate for financial difficulties to interfere with her education," Camilla continued. Her voice was gentle, loving, even, like a grandmother talking about a grandchild. "These things can be arranged. Or not arranged." Thomas looked into her eyes. They were empty. Whatever humanity had existed there once had been replaced by something else. By ambition, by fear, by the desperate need to survive whatever game she was playing. "I understand, Your Majesty," he said quietly. Sarah had already walked ahead toward the king's private dining room. Thomas followed, his mind racing. He had maybe 2 minutes. 2 minutes to decide between his own safety and his king's life, between his daughter's future and his conscience. The hallways blurred past. Gold frames holding portraits of dead monarchs, red carpet soft under his feet, marble pillars that had stood for centuries, all of it watching him. Judging him, they reached the king's private wing. Sarah knocked softly. "Enter," came the king's voice. Tired but warm, Sarah opened the door. Thomas stepped inside. The king sat at a small table by the window. He looked older than his years tonight. The weight of the crown showed in the lines around his eyes, the slump of his shoulders. He smiled when he saw Thomas. Finally. "I'm starving, Thomas." "What did Henry prepare tonight?" Thomas set the tray down. His hands shook. He was running out of time. Camilla would be here any second. She'd watch him serve the meal. Watch the king take the first bite. Watch him die. "Roasted pheasant, Your Majesty," Thomas said. His voice sounded distant. "With Henry's special sauce? Wonderful." The king reached for his napkin. "You can leave it. I'll serve myself." "Actually, Your Majesty," Thomas began. The door opened. Camilla swept in, all smiles and grace. "Darling, I hope you're hungry? I specifically requested the pheasant tonight." The king looked up, surprised. "Did you?" That was thoughtful. "I know it's your favorite." She moved to stand beside the table. Her hand rested on the back of his chair. Possessive. Controlling. "I wanted tonight to be special." Thomas watched this performance. Watched her play the loving wife. All while poison sat 3 feet away from the man she'd married. "Thomas, you may serve it now," Camilla said. He reached for the dome. This was it. His last chance? He could drop the tray. Claim he tripped. But then what? She'd simply order new food. Try again tomorrow. And his daughter would suffer. His fingers touched the silver handle. "Your Majesty," he said suddenly. "I need to speak with you. Privately." Camilla's eyes flashed danger. "Thomas, that's highly inappropriate. It's about security. An urgent matter." Thomas kept his gaze on the king. Man to man. Servant to monarch. It cannot wait. The king frowned. He'd ruled long enough to recognize urgency. "What kind of security matter?" "A threat, sir, to your person." The room went silent. Camilla's hand tightened on the chair. "Thomas, you're being dramatic. The king needs to eat. What kind of threat?" The king's voice had changed. Sharper now. Alert, Thomas made his choice. 30 years of service. His daughter's future. His pension. His safety. All of it weighed against one truth. He'd sworn an oath. To protect and serve, no matter the cost. "The meal, Your Majesty." "It's been poisoned." The words hung in the air like smoke. Camilla didn't move. Didn't speak. The king stared at Thomas, processing. Then his gaze shifted to his wife. To her hand on his chair. To her face, which had gone perfectly blank. That's absurd, Camilla said, but her voice had lost its warmth. Thomas, you're clearly unwell. The stress of your duties. I smelled cyanide in the sauce, Thomas interrupted. He was committed now. No going back. And the queen consort was in the kitchen. She tried to give me a second vial to add to your water. You're mad, Camilla breathed. But she'd taken a step back, away from the table, away from the evidence. The king stood, slowly. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp in the tense silence. He looked at the covered plate, then at Thomas, then at Camilla. Prove it, he said quietly. Thomas reached for the dome and lifted it. The pheasant sat there, looking perfect. Too perfect. He picked up the sauce boat, brought it close to the king's face. Smell it, your majesty. Carefully. The king leaned in. His face changed. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He'd been in the military too, years ago. He knew the smell. That could be from the almonds in the preparation, Camilla said quickly. Henry uses almond oil sometimes. Thomas is overreacting. Henry doesn't use almond oil, the king said softly. His voice was steady, but something had broken in it. He knows I'm allergic. Has been for 3 years. He looked at his wife. You know this. Camilla's composure cracked. Just a fraction. Charles, this is ridiculous. A guard is making wild accusations. Where's Henry? The king asked. Where's the regular kitchen staff? I don't know. I'm not responsible for you told Thomas that Henry left for a family emergency. That you dismissed him. The king's voice grew harder. Is that true? Camilla opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time, she had no answer. The king walked to his desk and pressed a button. Within seconds, 2 palace guards appeared at the door. Not regular guards. Royal protection officers. Armed. Alert. Seal this room, the king ordered. No one enters or leaves. And get me the head of security. Now, the guards moved immediately. One spoke into his radio. The other positioned himself by the door. His hand rested near his weapon. Camilla laughed. It was a strange sound. High. Desperate. This is insane. You're going to believe a servant over your wife? Over everything we've built? What have we built, Camilla? The king's words were quiet. Deadly quiet. Tell me, what exactly have we built that's worth this? She stared at him. Her mask was fully gone now. In its place was something raw, something real and terrifying. You were going to replace me, she said. The words tumbled out. I heard you. Last week, talking to your advisors about succession, about legitimacy, about Anne, the king's first wife, divorced years ago. But recently there had been rumors of reconciliation, of regret. Those were private conversations, the king said. Ah, private. Camilla's voice rose. Nothing is private in this palace. Every whisper, every look, every plan. I've fought for decades to be here, to be queen. And you thought you could just erase me? Make me disappear like I never mattered? Thomas stood frozen, watching this unfold. This wasn't just about power. It was about fear. About a woman who'd sacrificed everything for a crown and couldn't bear to lose it. So you decided to kill me? The king's voice shook. Not with fear. With disbelief. That was your solution? I decided to survive. Camilla's hands clenched into fists. You wouldn't understand. You were born into this. The crown, the title, the respect. I had to claw my way up. Every day fighting against people who thought I wasn't worthy, wasn't royal enough, wasn't good enough? And this makes you worthy? The king gestured at the poisoned meal. Camilla's face crumpled, not with sadness. With rage. You don't get it. None of you get it. If Anne comes back, I become nothing. Just another mistress, another scandal. My children lose their place in succession. My entire life becomes a footnote in your story. The head of security burst through the door. Marcus Webb, a former MI5 agent, his eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene instantly. Your Majesty, the meal needs to be tested immediately, the king said. And I want the kitchen staff located. All of them. Find Henry. Marcus nodded to one of his team, who carefully lifted the tray. He turned to Camilla. Your Majesty, I need you to come with me.
Ow.
Camilla backed toward the window. No, I won't be paraded around like a criminal, Camilla. The king's voice was gentler now, sad. Please, don't make this worse. Worse? She laughed again. That same broken sound. How could it possibly be worse? You've already destroyed me. Her hand moved to her coat pocket. Marcus saw it. So did the armed guards. In an instant, 3 weapons were drawn, pointed at the queen consort. Hands where we can see them, Marcus ordered. Thomas's breath caught. Was she armed? Had she planned for this contingency? Camilla pulled her hand out slowly. She held another vial, identical to the one she'd dropped in the kitchen. Clear liquid inside. It's funny, she said, staring at it. I prepared 2 doses. 1 for you. 1 for myself, just in case. She looked at the king. I thought if you died, I could play the grieving widow. But if I got caught, I'd take this instead. Leave on my own terms. Camilla, no. The king started forward. Don't. She held up the vial. You've taken everything else. Let me keep my dignity. The room held its breath. Guards tensed. Marcus calculated angles. Thomas saw the queen's finger move toward the cork stopper. Time moved like honey. Thomas watched Camilla's fingers on the vial. Watched the guard's weapons track her movement. Watched the king's face collapse into something that looked like grief. You don't have to do this, the king said. Camilla, please. Think about your children. Your grandchildren. Her hand trembled. For a moment, Thomas thought she might lower the vial. Might surrender. Might choose life over pride. But then her jaw set. Her eyes hardened. My children will be fine, she said. They're stronger than you think. Stronger than I was. She looked at the vial. And they'll understand. One day, they'll understand that I did everything for them. For their future. Marcus took a careful step forward. Your Majesty, put down the vial. We can talk about this. Work something out. Work what out? Camilla snapped. A trial? Prison? Being stripped of my title while the world watches. While they call me a villain? A gold digger? A murderer? She shook her head. No, I won't give them that satisfaction. Thomas found his voice. Your Majesty. I have a daughter, Emily. She's starting university next month. Camilla's eyes flickered to him. You threatened her earlier? Threatened her future if I didn't cooperate. Thomas, don't, the king started. But the thing is, Thomas continued, my daughter taught me something. She told me once that doing the right thing isn't about what's easy. It's about what you can live with. He took a step toward Camilla. Guards tensed. I could have stayed silent. Kept my pension. Protected Emily's tuition. But I couldn't live with that. Could you live with this? Camilla stared at him. Really looked at him. Not as a servant. As a person. You have no idea what you've done to yourself. Your daughter? When this gets out, I know, Thomas said. Emily might lose that university spot. The press might come after us. I might lose everything. But she'll still have her father. And I'll still be able to look her in the eye. Something shifted in Camilla's expression. The vial lowered slightly. You're a fool, maybe, Thomas agreed. But I'm a fool who can sleep at night. The king moved then. Not toward Camilla. Toward Thomas. He placed a hand on the guard's shoulder. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. I won't forget this. Camilla watched this interaction. Saw the respect in her husband's eyes. The gratitude. Things she'd been chasing for decades. And she realized she'd never have them now. Not like this. I loved you, she said to the king. Her voice cracked. In the beginning, before all the politics and the titles and the pressure, I really loved you. I know, the king said. I loved you too. But it wasn't enough, was it? Tears streamed down her face now. Love is never enough in this world. Marcus used her distraction. He moved fast. One moment he was 5 feet away. The next, he'd grabbed her wrist. The vial fell, bounced on the carpet without breaking. 2 guards swarmed in, securing her arms. She didn't fight, just went limp. It's over, Marcus said gently. Let's go. They led her toward the door. She looked small suddenly, not like a queen. Just like a frightened woman who'd made terrible choices. At the threshold, she stopped, looked back at the king. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. And she was gone. The door closed. The king stood alone in the center of the room, staring at the space where his wife had been. Thomas watched him struggle to hold himself together, to maintain the royal composure. Your Majesty, Thomas said softly. Should I stay? The king's voice was rough. Please, just stay for a moment. They stood in silence. Outside, the palace hummed with emergency activity. Footsteps, radio chatter, the machinery of crisis management starting up. Soon, the whole world would know. The press would descend. The scandal would consume everything, did you know? The king asked suddenly. Did you suspect her before tonight? Thomas considered lying. But he'd committed to truth now. I saw small things. Your Majesty looks, comments, the way she tensed whenever anyone mentioned Anne, but I never imagined she'd go this far. The king nodded slowly. Neither did I. He walked to the window, looked out at the palace grounds. 37 years. That's how long I've known her. And I still didn't see this coming. People hide things, Your Majesty, even from those closest to them. Do you hide things, Thomas? From your daughter? Thomas thought about Emily, about all the times he'd smiled and said everything was fine when it wasn't, when the bills piled up, when his back hurt so badly he could barely stand. When he worried about her future, yes, he admitted, I hide my fears, my doubts. I want her to feel safe. And does she? I think so. I hope so. The king turned from the window. His eyes were red but dry. Your daughter will keep her university spot, full scholarship, and you'll receive a commendation. Financial compensation? Whatever you need, Your Majesty. That's not necessary, it's necessary for me, the king interrupted. You saved my life. You lost your anonymity, your peace, possibly your safety. Let me give you something in return. Thomas nodded, throat tight. Thank you, Your Majesty. 3 weeks later, Thomas stood in his small London flat packing boxes. Emily sat on the couch, reading news on her tablet. The story had dominated headlines for days. Queen consort arrested. Palace poison plot. Royal marriage in shambles.
Dad,
Emily said, looking up. They're calling you a hero again. Thomas taped a box shut. I'm not a hero. I just did my job. Your job was to serve dinner, not to risk everything. Set down the tablet. Why did you really do it? Thomas sat beside her. 31 years at the palace. 31 years of watching, serving, staying silent, and in one night everything changed. Because, he said slowly, I kept thinking about what kind of man I wanted you to see when you looked at me. And I couldn't live with being someone who let murder happen because I was afraid. Emily hugged him, tight. You're definitely a hero to me. They sat like that for a moment. Then Thomas's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Thomas Morgan. A woman's voice, professional, clipped. Speaking. This is Helen Bradford. I'm calling from the Crown Prosecution Service. We'll need you to testify at the trial next month. Thomas's stomach dropped. He'd known this was coming, but hearing it made it real. I understand. You'll be under protection, of course. We're taking this very seriously. The defense will try to discredit you. They'll dig into your past, your finances, your relationships, anything they can use. Let them dig, Thomas said. I've got nothing to hide. After he hung up, Emily looked worried. Dad, will you be safe? I'll be fine. The palace has arranged security. But what about after? After the trial? When the cameras go away? Thomas had thought about this. Thought about it every night. The truth was, he didn't know. Some people already called him a traitor, claimed he'd betrayed the queen consort. Others praised him. But praise didn't stop threats, didn't stop hate mail, didn't stop people from recognizing him on the street. "We'll figure it out," he said. Together, a knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas tensed. The security detail outside should have screened anyone coming up. He approached carefully, checked the peephole. Marcus Webb stood there in civilian clothes, the head of palace security. Thomas opened the door. "May I come in?" Marcus asked. Thomas stepped aside. Marcus nodded politely to Emily, then turned to Thomas. "I wanted to speak with you personally. Away from the palace? About what? About what happens next?" Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. "The king has a proposal. You could work directly for royal protection, training new recruits, teaching them what real loyalty looks like." Thomas took the envelope, but didn't open it. "I'm 57 years old. I'm not sure I'm cut out for training." "You're exactly who we need," Marcus said firmly. "After what happened with Camilla, we're rebuilding everything. New protocols, new screening, new culture. We need people who understand that service isn't blind obedience. It's moral courage." Emily leaned forward. "Dad, you should do it." Thomas looked at her, then at Marcus, then at the envelope in his hands. Inside was an offer, a new beginning. A chance to turn one night of horror into something meaningful. "Can I think about it?" "Take your time," Marcus said, "but not too much time. The trial starts in 3 weeks. After that, everything changes again." After Marcus left, Thomas opened the envelope. The salary was generous, more than generous, enough to secure Emily's future. "Enough to rebuild? You're going to say yes, aren't you?" Emily asked. Thomas smiled. "I think I am." That night after Emily went to bed, Thomas stood at his window, looking out at London, at the city he'd protected in his own small way. He thought about Camilla, about how fear and ambition had twisted her into someone capable of murder, about how close she'd come to succeeding. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for your courage." From someone who was too afraid to speak up. Then another. "You saved more than the king. You saved the integrity of the crown." And another. "My father worked at the palace for 40 years. He taught me that service means sacrifice. You honored that teaching. Thank you." Messages kept coming. From palace staff, from former guards, from people he'd never met but who understood what he'd risked. Thomas realized something then. He hadn't just saved a life that night in the kitchen. He'd proven that even in a world of power and politics and fear, ordinary people could still choose right over easy. His daughter had been correct. It wasn't about what was easy. It was about what you could live with. Thomas Morgan could live with his choice. 2 months later, at the trial, he sat in the witness box. Cameras weren't allowed, but he felt their presence anyway. He felt the weight of history watching. Camilla sat across the courtroom. She looked smaller now, fragile. When their eyes met, she nodded once. A tiny acknowledgement. Maybe respect. Maybe regret. Thomas told the truth. The whole truth. Every detail of that night. The poison. The threats. The broken vial. The moment he chose to speak up, when the prosecutor asked why he'd risked everything. Thomas thought of Emily, of the king, of all the people who depended on others doing the right thing. Because, he said simply, someone had to. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Camilla was found guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, abuse of power. She'd spend the rest of her life in prison. The crown would survive. The king would heal. And somewhere in London, guard-turned-trainer would teach the next generation that courage mattered more than comfort. Thomas. Morgan went home that night to his daughter. They ordered takeout. Watched television. Lived a normal life, because that's what heroes do. They survive. They choose right. And they live with those choices every single day.